My question about elite circles, we constantly hear this word elite, the elites, the rich elites, the global elites, the elites. You know, these days in America, everything's so fracturized. I'm on Team Red, I'm a Democrat, I'm
very
polarized,
blue,
very polarized, right? And one thing I always say is like, I don't care about the blue, I don't care about the red, I follow the green, right? It's all about the money, follow the money, right?
Oh, right, I agree with you there, yeah.
These themes that we're talking about with J. Edgar Hoover back in the 50s and beyond that, JFK and to the 80s and Reagan and Clinton in the 90s, up until today and Trump, there seems to be like three common themes: money, power, and sex. And that just sort of pierces through everything. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Those are the major three things probably that are a common thread throughout my book, because my book really starts back in like the 40s and goes up. And so, yeah, I mean, through those decades, that's what makes the world go around as far as the U.S. is concerned in power. Because, you know, a lot of people look at the politicians and think that's the power, right? But who is backing those politicians and who's backing those backers? And to paraphrase J.R. or Tolkien, who's the banker of those backers, right? So there's like always these different layers of power. And talking about someone like Roy Cohn had a system called the favor bank system, which is what he called it, and everyone he interacted with had an open account in his favor bank, and you either, you know, do deals with him or you go against him and you get plus or minuses, and, you know, you make all these unsavory alliances, especially New York City, to stay in power, and things like that. And Roy Cohn learned a lot of this just growing up as a very young boy. He was not typical. He was very interested in power and accumulating it for a very young age, and he was very close to like very prominent mob-leaked businessmen like Generoso Pope, who was the father of one of his best friends growing up, and had this. He was very close to Frank Costello, the mobster, and ran one of the biggest cement companies or concrete companies in New York. Obviously, very important to real estate and very close to organized crime. Very politically powerful because he had a monopoly on the Italian language newspapers in New York for Italian immigrants. So he basically controlled that voting bloc to a significant degree. And so, you know, Roy Cohn had sort of an inside track into how these deals are made behind closed doors with businessmen and politicians. His father was a very prominent judge with the Democratic Party. And at this point, you know, the Democratic Party in New York, a lot of that power base is unions, and the mob took over a lot of the unions very early on in the 20s and the 30s. And there are even some cases I note in the book where, you know, they wanted a mob-backed politician in power. They threatened the life of some guy, and then they just put the mob guy in. And this is back in the 30s. Have things really changed? I don't necessarily think that it has. I think more mainstream media willingness to look at those cases has declined steadily with the years, because what kind of journalist wants to take those kind of risks, right? Wow. Especially if you live in the swamp that you're writing about.
Pat, let me get your opinion, because this is mind-blowing to me. I don't know if there's anybody on the planet like Pat that has interviewed collectively business people, political figures, and mob people.
Oh, really?
Like if you put those three trifecta together, Pat venture to say, I don't know if anybody's on your level in that regard. You've interviewed Rudy Giuliani and kind of how they compare, you know, what the mob does and political figures. Like when you're processing all this, you brought up Frank Costello. Right. Like when you're hearing these common themes, like how are you processing all this?
No, I mean, listen, I can see this happening. Because the easiest way to get somebody, like you ever see somebody that flips? Like even the conversation came up with Joe Manchin. We're talking about why did he all of a sudden go from not supporting to supporting? What happened there? What happened with Colonel Powell go from, you know, where he was at to all of a sudden flipping? Why do some people all of a sudden dramatically flip? Which makes no sense. You were loyal 60 years to this cause, then dramatically you go XYZ. Did somebody have something on you? Is somebody calling and saying, take a look at this picture, take a look at this video, take a look at this? I'm not telling you to do this. All I'm saying to you is, if you don't, there are people much more powerful than me that are going to probably leak this to the public, and I don't want your reputation to be ruined in the face of your kids and all that other stuff. There are very few people that are willing to say, go ahead, do it. I don't care. Go ahead. Do. Very, very few people. Matter of fact, I'm willing to say it's 0.0001%, because these same people that are driven by power, sex, and money are also driven by legacy and their reputation. And so the moment you risk their legacy and reputation, that's the ultimate control. But you want to talk about the ultimate slave? The ultimate slave is when somebody has that kind of dirt on you. For the rest of your life, you have to do whatever they tell you to do at the sacrifice of anything. So Has that happened? Was the mob involved for doing this? The mob wants to control and have power over you. Back in the days, the way they did it, they had many creative ways of doing it. I don't see this not being the case.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.